very silent. All right.
She found some more on that phone. She told me. I think they're gonna see.
All right. We have a lot of people, I guess, with the week. They said it was not good, so we have a small group. So,
Oh, that's okay.
what we're going to do tonight is first thank you all for being here and taking time out of your night to be here. What we're going to do first, I'm going to explain a little bit about the title. Your lifespan is a reflection of your health plan. And kind of explain what that means, and then we're going to go into the part of the talk where I'm just going to introduce to you some of the ideas and information that we're going to present. And then we're going to talk about putting together a health plan, what that looks like. And the way we're going to go about this is to present information to you that has influenced the overall quality of life of especially here in the United States. And the way I'm going to present it is going to use what should be the healthiest segment of our population as an example, which are children. And from there, we're going to extrapolate that information and see how it affects us as adults. Okay? If you have questions, just wait until the end. That way I can get through, so if people have to leave, they can leave on time. So your lifespan is a reflection of your health plan. If you picture yourself in a boat and you're traveling down a river, and there's two ways to navigate. One, you have your hand on the wheel and you're directing the boat. You're guiding the boat in terms of where you want to go. The second way is to put it on autopilot, where someone else or something else is influencing where the boat goes. And that's really representative of how we go about our health plans. The person who's steering the boat is navigating their ship, navigating their boat. Now, at some point, we're going to encounter some choppy waters, waters that take us off course. So the person steering the boat is going to redirect the boat, reevaluate, where am I, how do I get back on course? So that person, for example, may look at their lifestyle and say, oh, you know what, I haven't been doing this as much. I need to check myself and do more. Or I've been doing more of this, I need to stop that, right? They're going to evaluate what they've been doing, how they've been doing it. Look at their lifestyle, their daily routine, their habits, and what they can correct and modify. And then get back on course. Travel through the choppy waters, which may be a problem they're having, a condition they've been diagnosed with, some type of obstacle in terms of their health. But then they get through the choppy waters and they're back onto clear seas. Now, the person who is navigating the boat by autopilot is going to go through those choppy waters, and they're still going to stay on autopilot. In other words, something else or someone else is going to influence the decisions and choices they're making, even when they're going through turbulent waters. Now, who does that? How are we influenced? What entity or person influences our decisions? So, for the most part, who can monopolize us being sick? Pharmaceutical companies mostly, right? So I say that because if you look at the decisions we make when we're on autopilot, they're made for us. Do this, do that, take this, take that. We get through the choppy waters, but we really haven't learned anything about how we can modify our lifestyle. Those decisions are made for us. They get us through the choppy waters, but we never figure out what the underlying cause of the problem is. We're treating the symptoms. And so those influences will dictate your actions. They will also have a huge impact, not just on your lifespan, but on the quality of life within those years. When we look at a health plan and how we go about living, depending on if you're on autopilot or if you're in control of your ship, has a lot to do with not only quality, but longevity. We see here in the United States, we should be living well into 120, 150 years old. But we have shorter lifespans than the majority of the rest of the world. We are one of the only countries, there's 2 countries that allows influencing of our decisions directly from this entity to consumers. New Zealand and the United States are the only countries that allow marketing directly to you. So now we're going oftentimes to the doctor saying, I want to do this, I want this, I want to take that, I want to try this. And they feel pressured to honor your decision. Since we've had direct-to-consumer advertising, profits have increased over 3,000% because it works. If you think about it, the the industry itself is one of the only industries that benefits from you being sick. Right? When you put together a health plan that allows you to express your fullest expression of health, you don't need that product. But the pharmaceutical companies are publicly held companies. Their goal is to produce revenues for their shareholders. They have an obligation to the shareholder. So they do that by creating more products and selling you more products. And the longer you use the product, the more profits they make. It's not about your health. It's a business model, right? There's no money in you being healthy. Maybe a health club, different food, but we're still buying food, right? But there's no money in you being healthy for a pharmaceutical company. Now, we need medication, we need those companies for a crisis, but in terms of living 20, 30, 40 years by buying their product, that doesn't produce better health. Like I said, we should be living well into 120, 150 years old. But we don't see that. In our country, the average lifespan is 76 years old. In fact, women have the shortest lifespan of all these industrialized countries. So tonight, I'd like to prompt you to encourage you to start asking questions. Why? Why is that? Why am I doing this? What is the outcome? What are the benefits or the consequences of what I'm doing? Why are you recommending this? How is this going to impact me? Because we're very reactionary with health. We wait for something to happen, and then we say, okay, what can I do? Being proactive is always going to produce a better result. This is from Jonas Salk, a Nobel Prize laureate. He says the future doctor should concentrate not on fighting sickness, but on exploring and enhancing wellness. This is what produces health. I've used this example before, and I'm going to use it again tonight because I think it's very appropriate. The apple and the donut. We eat the apple, and you get an apple result, apple benefit. So if that's your lifestyle, and the lifestyle is made up of an apple, you're going to have a better quality health, better quality life. But if the donut was our lifestyle, that produces a different result. If you ate a donut and you develop, say, like a little fat pustule on your arm, you'd say, oh, that's strange. Huh. Then you eat another donut and you get another one. You say, oh, let me connect the dots here. Maybe I'll stop eating the donut. The problem is you don't get that. You don't see the effects of eating the donut or having a donut lifestyle until sometimes 20, 30, 40 years later. And then to trace it back, see, here we're treating a symptom now, the result of this lifestyle. But if we change our lifestyle, you get a different result. I've shared this story with you, and I think, again, it's appropriate to share it again because I think it really exemplifies what I'm trying to talk about. I took care of this fellow for a long time. He came in the office one day at high blood pressure. I said, Jeff, we need to figure out what's causing your high blood pressure because he never had a history of it. So he had an appointment with his family doctor, went to the family doctor, and then I talked to him after that. Of course, had high blood pressure. They put him on high blood pressure medication. I said, Jeff, you need to figure out what is causing the high blood pressure. See, our bodies have this intelligence within it. And that intelligence should be expressed throughout our lives to produce optimal wellness, right? Even in light of symptoms, because sometimes symptoms are healthy, right? But that intelligence is never going to sabotage our body's ability to produce health. We just have to understand what it's saying. So in this case, I said, Jeff, see a nephrologist, have your kidneys checked out. He did. They found an aneurysm on his nephrotic artery, and they took care of the aneurysm. The blood pressure went down. See, you have an aneurysm over here. His body isn't just all of a sudden going to produce high blood pressure, but in response to the stress the aneurysm was causing, the change in function, his body had to elevate blood pressure in response to the aneurysm. But see, this is supposed to be a short-term compensation, right? Once the aneurysm is taken care of, the blood pressure drops. But in this case, the aneurysm's here, his blood pressure is here, which is an appropriate response to the aneurysm. Now he's taking high blood pressure medication, so it's pushing blood pressure down. But his body says, no, 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 look over there. We have to respond to that. So now it's trying even harder to elevate blood pressure, working even harder in response to the aneurysm, because it's a response that's appropriate for the aneurysm. Is he in a healthier state or a sicker state now? Sicker state. I don't even know if that makes sense. A more sick state. A more sick state, right? Because his body says you need to be here. If you're bringing me down, I have to work even harder to get back up. But once the aneurysm was taken care of, blood pressure no longer needed to be elevated, so it went down. Now this can be blood pressure, it could be cholesterol, it could be diabetes, it could be any scenario. Your body isn't going to self-sabotage itself. It's going to respond to whatever the stress is within the body, altering its state of or expression of health. How we respond to that is important. But see, that donut produces changes that maybe we develop over 20, 30 years. So now we develop high blood pressure in response to chronic stress on our body. Whatever that stress is, could be an aneurysm, could be emotional stress. But what we do now is we just focus on the high blood pressure. We don't go back to the cause, but that's what produces changes within our health and the quality of our lives. When you look at health, there are 5 essentials. If we produce proper nutrition, proper diet, consistently, if we take part in regular exercise, we get enough rest and sleep, we have a good, healthy mindset, you get adjusted, your brain communicates with your body and says, hey, this is what you need to do. This is our adaptive process, the nervous system, right? That's what controls that. But if we put together a plan that encompasses all 5 of these, now you're generating momentum towards better health. The problem is, not everybody knows this. I always say you get a car, you get a manual. It tells you where all the buttons are, what all the lights are, what all the gauges are for. It gives you a maintenance schedule. You have a baby, you take the baby home, and you're like, all right, well, I don't know, what do I do? Right? We don't have a schedule.
They don't give you manuals for cars anymore either.
No, it's online, I guess. But we never get a schedule. We never get a full understanding or explanation as to what we should be doing to take care of ourselves. This is a quote I'd like to share. And it says, the author is Joseph Chilton Pierce, alludes to a future magical child, a child born and raised with minimum of unnatural stress and greatly increased adaptive mechanisms. At birth, each child has over 1 million options. By adulthood, the person's options have diminished drastically. It's as if we had 1 million buttons to push and we only pushed 3 or 4. The deterioration of the body that typically occurs before individuals reach adulthood leads to the deterioration across the entire spectrum of the brain-body system. We become progressively less able to learn, perceive, conceptualize, relate, and create. It's a path of physical erosion and a real loss of human intelligence. That's kind of typifies how children grow and develop. They should be flourishing. Magical children. That's what we all give birth to. Well, women do.
You.
And that's, yeah, and that's how that child should express themselves throughout their entire lives. But they start to deteriorate. They start to diminish their ability to function and express optimal health. What I'd like to do is share with you just facts. We're not going to get into a discussion on these. Just information that may help to connect some dots and have you think about questions. Why? Why is this? Could this be a reason? Because children should be the healthiest segment of our population. But the kids we're raising now are not expected to outlive their parents. We're raising kids, children, that have chronic conditions, that are sick. This is the first time in the history of the world that these kids have expressed such levels of dis-ease and sickness. 1950, 1 in every 25 kids was diagnosed with autism. 1970, 1980, 1 in 2,500 kids. Now, I want you to pay particular attention to the dates. Throughout this talk, we're going to talk about the 70s and 80s as a pivotal time, and the 80s and 90s as a transformation, a transition. Things changed during that time. But why is it 1 in 2,500 in the 70s, and now it's 1 in 36 kids? What is different with our kids? Is there anything different? Why is this? Since the 2000s, there's been a 241% increase in autism. We have to ask the question, why? We have to connect dots and say there's a reason for this. Genetically, kids are the same as they were, but what's different? Something has changed to cause a change in how many kids have autism. If you look at this small chart, every year except one, that ratio gets smaller and smaller. My question is why? 1986, kids received 12 vaccines from 0 to 18. 25 antigens. In other words, one shot may have several, like MMR, that's 3 antigens, 1 shot. Today, 51 to 54 vaccines, 171 to 225 antigens. Why? Why is that? Anybody ever ask the question, why do vaccines stop around 18 years old? Why don't they push vaccines and say, hey, 20 years old, you should get back? Why is it just school-age kids? Could it be that when are vaccines administered? August, September, when they go to school? Because they have to go to school, they have to get vaccinated to go to school. That's what people think, you don't have to. My kids were never vaccinated. They've been to private daycare, they've been to universities, they've been to public schools. That's what we're led to think. That's why they administer vaccines before school. Why do they stop at 18? Kids graduate. They can't use that. In 20 years old, what are you going to say to you have to take it before you go to work? Why is it only up to 18? Why not 20, 25, 30? Why? Something else that we see an incredible increase in, infertility, right? 1 in 6 people has problems with fertility. Why is that? What's different today as opposed to 30, 40 years ago? Girls are beginning puberty almost a year earlier than 40 years ago, 70s and 80s. 3 months earlier per decade from 1977 to 2013. Why is that? Why are our children developing faster? And what are the consequences of that? For example, at the turn of the 20th century, the average girl had her first period at 16, 17 years old. Now, it's 12 and 13 years old. Boys, 10 years old. Early puberty in girls has been associated with an increased risk of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, obesity, and even diabetes in early life. Some of the conditions are related to prolonged long-term exposure to to estrogen production. And we see an increase in all of these conditions. See, might not happen at 12 and 13, but now 10 years later, this is when people are having babies or trying to. Is there a dot that needs to be connected here? Let's take a look. Drugs that cause erectile dysfunction. Antidepressants and hypertension medication, the first two. Now we're talking about kids, okay? Prescription of antidepressants in children between 5 and 12 years old has increased 40% between 2015 and 2021. Why? 5-year-olds. Could that be now the generation that started that, trying to have kids? How many advertisements do we see for ED? We never saw that back in the 70s and 80s. Nobody ever had problems. Infertility was very rare. Antidepressants between young teens and adults increased almost 400% between 88, 94, 2005, 2008. Why is that? Why do we see that increase? See, this is what we need to start doing. And then we need to start connecting dots. High blood pressure in children and adolescents is a growing health problem. Children should be screened for elevated blood pressure annually beginning at 3 years of age or every visit after that based on risk factors. 3 years old. There's a link between hypertension medication and erectile dysfunction. We're giving kids 3 years old hypertensive medication. Does that even sound right?
No.
But could that be the reason now we're treating these conditions, but we don't link it back to here? Why are our kids depressed, anxiety, whatever it is that they're taking these medications for? Antidepressant medication should only be prescribed. It's designed for severely clinically depressed people for a short period of time. But now we have a product that we're selling to kids and they're going to take it for a long time. Instead of figuring out why, now we have captured this customer
Market.
for a long time. And we wonder, if you start taking medication at 3 and 5 years old, how long can your body last? Why is it these kids are not expected to outlive their parents? Could these be some of the dots that we need to start connecting? Let's talk about the worldwide prevalence of essential hypertension in children and adolescents continues to increase. Traditionally, providers have used off-label drugs to treat pediatric hypertension, meaning the rigorous clinical trials of these drugs have not been specifically performed in pediatric patients. What they do is they take the adult dose based on weight. They say, okay, this should be acceptable for kids, prescribe it to kids. But these trials have not taken place. These are a magical children. Come out of their mother's womb perfect, with nothing but potential. Let's talk about something called the gut microbiome. You might have heard these words. What is the gut microbiome? It is the ecosystem, the environment in the gut where we grow bacteria, healthy bacteria. This is very important. Most people think the gut has to do with digestion, and it does. But look what else the gut microbiome is responsible for. It can help reduce the risk of chronic disease like obesity, heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. Support immune function, your gut. Aids in digestion and nutrient absorption, maintains mental health, may reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression. Your gut. Promotes healthy aging, supports respiratory health, regulates blood chemistry, enhances fiber fermentation. Because when we eat a healthy diet full of fiber, that's what bacteria grow on in the gut. Moderates gut-brain axis, supports overall health and well-being. This is what the gut is responsible for. It plays a big role in depositing of fat, in obesity, metabolic disease, inflammation. This is your gut. How do you feed your gut? 80% of your immune system is located in the gut. You know how people say, I have a gut feeling?
Mm-hmm.
I gotta trust my gut. Your gut is known as the second brain. Maintaining a healthy gut microbiome is essential for immune function and overall well-being. Your gut. This is one of the reasons why diet is so important. Having a health plan that creates a healthy diet. Now, what can disrupt your gut, that ecosystem? Talking about kids, right? Let's look. One round of antibiotics could take months or years for your gut to restore itself. So now, who takes the most antibiotics? The kids. Doctors prescribe antibiotics for the treatment of bacterial infections, not effective for viral infections. Knowing whether you have a bacterial or viral infection is very important. How do you do that? Blood work. How many times do people go to the doctor and they say, well, it looks like you have an infection, take the antibiotics, right? Without any diagnosis. Most cases of upper respiratory tract infection, colds, flu, ear infections are viral. I have taken care of so many kids that take 2, 3, 4 rounds of antibiotics. You're talking about months to years before their gut restores itself. And that's 80% of your immune system. So now, how can their body fight the infection? Why is it that people have another infection? I took antibiotics and then the infection came back. Well, it was never gone. But when you do that, you're depleting your own immune system. Now, your body can't respond to that virus or whatever it is it's fighting. Your gut microbiome is so important. 1 in every 3 outpatient prescriptions is unnecessary. Most times there's no diagnosis. This is a study done in 2016. 23% of antibiotic prescriptions were not medically justified. 36% were potentially appropriate, 28% were not associated with any documented diagnosis. Unless you're doing blood work, you're not going to know what you're treating. Unless you do a diagnostic test, you don't know what you're treating. But yet, take this. And we wonder why these kids are sick. But those kids grow up to be us. Healthy or unhealthy adults, depending on what they do. We have to start connecting dots, and you have to start asking why. Why are you prescribing this to me? What is the effect? Is it going to have a consequence on my health? Is this a proper reason for taking this? Very important just to ask questions. What happens when we overprescribe antibiotics? Well, the bacteria that cause disease are remarkably resilient. They want to grow just like anything else and can develop ways to evade the drugs meant to kill or weaken them. This phenomenon is called antibiotic resistance. When we keep giving antibiotics, the viruses or the bacteria say, hey, we can grow around this. And the viruses do the same because the viruses can't be, they're not doing anything, the antibiotics aren't doing anything for the viruses. So now, bacterial infection in the United States and throughout the world are becoming resistant to the drugs. What is the effect? Antibiotic resistance has been called one of the world's most pressing public health issues. We've caused one of the most pressing public health issues. We've done that. Now you might say, I don't take antibiotics. You know, over 80% of the antibiotics that are prescribed in this country, if you want to call it prescribed, are given to the animals. Most people don't know that. Farmers give antibiotics to animals because of the crowded conditions that they live in. Chicken farms, huge. They're so packed with animals. If an infection starts here, it's going to run through the whole thing. So they give them all these antibiotics. But then you eat that animal that has the antibiotics, your gut microbiome is now decreased in terms of its effectivity and how your immune system expresses itself because of what you eat. So you might think, it doesn't affect me. In the United States, farmers use 5 times more antibiotics than they do in other countries. My question is why? Why? Is something we're doing here different than in other countries? But look at the results. We rank 37th in the world in health. Your gut microbiome is based on what we eat. So now, what we eat is affecting our health, in our immune system, could be affecting chronic conditions that we have, emotional health, basically every function of your body. Have you ever heard of genetically modified organisms? GMO foods,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's heard of Roundup. The active ingredient in Roundup, the reason why it works is something called glyphosate. Now, why would you genetically modify foods? Well, you genetically modify anything, so it takes on the trait of something else. You modify it so it acts like this. Now, in 1982, the FDA said, okay, we're going to use genetically modified organisms in insulin. In 1994, they said, okay, you can use this in food. Now, why do they do that? Let me give you an example. If you had a peanut and you said, let's genetically modify this peanut, you take glyphosate and you insert it into the gene of the peanut. So now it becomes part of that peanut. So now, as that plant is growing, a bug takes a bite out of the peanut plant, it dies. So you want the food to have the traits of glyphosate because it kills the bugs that eat the plants. The problem is, then we eat the plant, right? So now we see all across the world, 32 countries have banned the use of glyphosate. 64 countries around the world say, okay, this food has to be labeled. We need to inform our customers that they're eating this, so they have a choice. Eastern Europe, the European Union, majority of those countries have banned the use of glyphosate. The United States has no official legislation banning GMO foods. Look at how, if I had a product to sell and I knew it was safe, I would just tell you, hey, this is what's in the product. In 2016, Congress passed GMO labeling laws. It will be required that food producers label their products with a disclosure that ingredients contain genetically modified ingredients. That sounds good, right? Everybody's going to be informed. This is how they inform you. The caveat: the law gives the Agriculture Department 2 years to draft the rules and define what foods have to be labeled as GMO. Many were exempt. So the food companies determine, is this healthy or not? The law states that the GMO disclosures do not have to be on the product label themselves, but on the producer's website. So when you're in the store, you have to go to the producer's website, link to a QR code on the product label. The QR code would require someone to obviously have a smartphone, but be directly connected to the internet. That's where you find out if there are GMO ingredients. So if this was safe and effective, why would we have to go through all this trouble? Why? In the UK, they allow 0.3 milligrams per kilogram of body weight of exposure to GMO. In the United States, it's 1.75. These are the graphics that reflect that. Now, what does glyphosate affect? Increase in cancer, endocrine disruption. Glyphosate has been shown to interfere with hormone regulation, potentially leading to reproductive and developmental disorders. You mean like erectile dysfunction? You mean like increase or decrease the age of puberty? You mean like infertility? Since the 90s, right? So if children started eating this food when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years old, now they're trying to have kids. Endocrine disruption, gut microbiome disruption. So we've seen how important the gut microbiome is. It disrupts that. Neurotoxicity and pesticide residue. In other words, it bioaccumulates in your body. You can't break it down. It's not an apple. We're designed to eat an apple and break it down. You're not designed to eat glyphosate, so it doesn't break down, it bioaccumulates. Heavy metal toxicity and things like that, Parkinson's, MS, Alzheimer's. Why? Atrazine. We import 70 million tons of atrazine a year. You know what's interesting? We import it from companies that ban it. They don't use it in their country. We take it in. 70 million pounds a year. It causes hormonal disruption. Again, reproductive problems, reproductive effects, neuroinflammatory apoptosis, cell death, genetic problems, and systemic toxicity, because it goes to your entire body. Why do we use this? What reason do we have? Autoimmune diseases occur when the body's immune system mistakenly attacks and destroys its own healthy cells. There are over 80 different types of autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases, the body is supposed to defend against foreign invaders, but now it attacks itself. So when you eat the peanut, you break that peanut down, and that peanut becomes the cells and tissues of your heart, your liver, your stomach, your brain. That's how we rebuild, because the body's always replenishing damaged cells and tissues. So what you eat gets broken down, distributed to the body, and now that's what builds new cells. Well, if your body says, okay, we're going to take part of the peanut and place it here, your body says, okay, but there's something in that peanut that we don't know what it is. What do we do against that? We attack it. And it starts attacking itself, because now that peanut is part of you. That's how you're rebuilding your body. Autoimmune diseases. The autoantibodies are kind of the marker for autoimmune disease, and that's increased 50% over the last 30 years. We have to start asking questions why, and be knowledgeable about this. One of the most notable downstream effects of metabolic disruption by glyphosate are fertility issues. Puberty has been occurring much earlier ages than ever before, and infertility and other hormone imbalances. New research suggests that glyphosate has an impact on erectile dysfunction, male fertility, and decreased sperm counts. Not only can glyphosate cause changes in estrogen production and fertility problems, but higher exposures glyphosate during pregnancy may increase the risk of producing premature low-weight babies. Why is it these kids, young adults, are having all these problems? We don't see infertility people our age. We never saw that. But why is it 1 in 6 is having that issue now? See, they were raised on this food. We weren't. Even the fast food industry years ago wasn't unhealthy like it is now. It's really scary. We have over 10,000 chemicals, some potentially toxic, that are allowed in our food. 99% of the chemicals introduced in 2000 were green lighted for use by food and chemical companies rather than the Food and Drug Administration. The Food and Drug Administration is an entity that's supposed to protect us, look out for us, right? But what they do is they allow the food companies to determine, is this healthy or not? So these chemicals, and the EPA does the same thing, these chemicals are rated as generally regarded as safe. It's called GRAS. It's like a loophole, because it was only designed for very simple products, olive oil, things like that. Compounds that are generally regarded as safe don't need to go through thorough official approval process. So if I had money, a whole stack of money in a room, and I said, okay, Mr. Bank Robber, watch over the money. Make sure it's left untouched. And I came back in the room, and it looks like some of the money's gone, but I asked the bank robber, anybody take any money? No, everything's here. That's what we're doing. See, we need to start asking questions why. And then connecting dots. I'm just presenting facts to you, right? And we can say, are these dots that need to be connected? Why are our magical children having all these health issues? Why? What are we doing? According to one study in 2016, the US was still using 72 pesticides that were banned in the European Union. Why? There's a lot of money.
Yep.
Mm.
It's all
lot of money.
about the money.
See, if you follow the money trail, you know,
Mm.
because these are companies that say, you know what, we're gonna make more money.
Philip Morris.
It's amazing. If I'm a farmer and I don't use GMO seeds, right? I have a natural organic farm, but next door to me is a farm that's a GMO farm. And just because the wind blows their seeds
Yep.
onto my land,
Cross pollination.
I can be sued.
Mhm. That's what Dad been
And they're
saying
wiping out little small farmers,
for years.
these big companies. They didn't intentionally do this, but they said that they're infringing on copyrights and things like that of how the seed is produced and things like that. It's crazy. Quaker Oats in the US. Why do we need to put coloring agents and use artificial colorings and flavorings when in the UK they don't have to? They use freeze-dried fruit. Why is that? We make the product and they said, no, we don't want to buy that unhealthy product. You have it, but you better make it healthier for us. I mean, look at Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew isn't even that unhealthy in Europe. Second ingredient is high fructose corn syrup. And then you have dyes and preservatives. Look at what we feed our kids, Fruit Loops. Red dye 40, blue dye 1, yellow dye, BHT. I mean, there's so many different wordings in those ingredients, but it's high fructose corn syrup every time you see corn. Why is it not as unhealthy in Canada? Why? Why do we need to eat this? See, we need to start asking these questions. And then you stop buying the products, and you know what happens? They change. I mean, about 20 years ago, when I would go to Whole Foods and buy organic products, that was the only place I could find them. Amazon, I don't think existed then. And certainly you couldn't go to Target, Walmart, Costco, Kroger, a grocery store and buy it. Now you can. You know why? Because people ask the question, why don't you have this? This is what I will spend my money on. I will buy products from your store, but this is what I require. And now you see some changes. But most people aren't even aware of this. Let's talk about food for a minute. The different types of food. We have unprocessed food or natural food. Food that comes directly from plants or animals, not altered. Minimally processed food. These are natural foods that have been lightly processed to clean or remove some unwanted or inedible parts. They don't include added ingredients like oil, sugars, things like that. Now, processed foods. Foods that are manufactured with additional oil, sugar, salt, fats, but are derived from natural or minimally processed foods and recognizable, right? We know what these foods are. Then we have ultra-processed foods. These are called industrial foods. They're made in a lab. They're made from oils, fats, sugars, starches, proteins, or they're synthesized in labs. Not grown in a field. Synthesized in labs. The ingredients come directly from, if they have few, if any, ingredients from natural plants or animals. Our kids, our magical children. Research shows a staggering 6%, 67% of the calories in the children's diets in the US are consuming or come from ultra-processed foods. What do they have? Or what do they cause? Obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, cancers, but it goes beyond the physical. Studies have revealed a connection between ultra-processed food consumption and an increased risk of mental health conditions such as anxiety and depression. So now, we eat the foods, we have anxiety and depression, we treat that with antidepressants. Now we have erectile dysfunction, we have hormonal issues, we have infertility, we treat that with something else. This is a cash cow.
It makes you hungry, so you eat food.
It's designed that way.
Yeah.
Yep, sure is.
It's designed to make you addicted to it. Type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancer, dementia, early death. A study of Eating Habits and Longevity found people who consume the most ultra-processed foods were 62% more likely to die prematurely. Why is it our kids are not expected to outlive their parents? Could it be what we feed them? You ever watch a kid eating some candy or something and the dog is next to him and he starts giving the dog or she starts giving the dog that? What do the parents say? Don't give the dog that. It'll make him sick. You eat it. Isn't that there's some irony there,
Really scary.
right? Now, you might not be aware of this, but the meat you eat may not even be real. They're producing lab meat called cultured meat, clean meat, cellular meat. It's derived from muscle tissue taken from stem cells of animals. One small single sample can make unlimited amounts of hamburgers. And you're not going to be told what you're eating. You think you're eating a cow from down the street, from the pasture. It was made in a lab. But you're not even aware of it because it's never going to be labeled. This is something that's really important to be aware of. This is what, I don't want to name names, I won't say like Bill Gates or anything, but he has more money in this because he has companies that design this, that make this. Pull him up on YouTube. He's a big proponent of this. This is where we're going.
And world hunger.
And world hunger.
Yeah.
But that's why they're pushing this, because they say we don't have enough food to feed everyone. We do. We do. We're not using it properly. We don't need to put all this in our food. We weren't designed to make food in a lab. There's just something inherently wrong with that. Why? This is what our kids are going to grow up on, especially the next generation. By 2060, young adults under the age of 20 can experience high rates of diabetes. That's what they forecast, a 673% increase. Why? Why don't we look at that and say, let's see what causes diabetes? We know, lifestyle, change that. To me, that makes sense. That's very simple. Plastic bottles, BPA free, even found to leach chemicals with estrogenic activity. And we wonder why kids are developing puberty so much earlier, erectile dysfunction, infertility. Because it's in the baby's bottles. Advent, Camelback sippy cups. Right? These are things we need to be aware of. And we wonder why 31% of our kids have chronic conditions. Should be the healthiest segment of our population. With the food they eat, 30% of boys and girls under the age of 20 are obese or overweight. 40% of 16 to 19-year-olds are obese. 26% of 2 to 5-year-olds are overweight, and more than 15% are obese. Obesity is implicated in 2/3 of all leading causes of death. You see, these kids have no chance to be healthy unless we're educated and we can help guide them. Because they don't understand. That's what they have available to them. Go into schools, see what they have. For lower income people who get government subsidized, this is all they eat. Right? That's all the government gives them. You should read the ingredients of the formula that these folks that are on government subsidized incomes, or just the formula you see in the stores. My gosh, infants, you should read the labels. It's terrible. But the more we educate our kids, the more we do things to help improve health, it filters down. I'm going to share with you a text message I got from my 21-year-old. He said, "Thank you for being so strict on how we ate when growing up with everything. I know we didn't understand, but I do now, and I can't thank you enough. You always stood by your word and research, and now I understand. You were right all along with everything."
Wow.
And that make you feel good.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Right? My kids, this is all they heard from me. Shampoo, toothpaste, deodorant, soap, conditioner, organic. What you put on your body goes in your body. Dad, why can't we just go here? Why don't we do this? Now, I'm not saying that my kids have never eaten stuff. I know they have. But now he lives in Northern Virginia. He had 3 things that he had to find when he moved up there. This is what he told me. Dad, I need to find an apartment. Great. I need to find a Whole Foods up there, and I need to find a gym. Right? He is creating a lifestyle for himself that's going to produce a different result than most kids. He's 21 years old, and he's making those decisions. And there were battles in the house, you know, but I always told him, what I would do is bring home, here, read this. You tell me what you want to do. It's not always easy as a parent. You want to make the kids happy. But I knew my kids were going to have different choices. My daughter's down at Virginia Tech. You know, when they, in the cafeteria, you do the best you can, right? Yeah. Now she's in an apartment. She sends me pictures. Dad, this is what I found. Is this good? I made this to eat. You know, I know they're making different choices. May not be 100%, but that's okay. They're aware of the consequences. They see it with their friends. Why is so-and-so always sick? Why did they get tubes in the ear growing up? Why did this and that? We never had that, Dad. Yeah. That's because we put together a health plan for you. I put together a health plan for my kids. I would always take them to the gym with me. I would come home from my run and my kids are like, Daddy, I want to run. All right, let's go out for another run. Right? I always did that with them. Now they work out, they exercise, they have pretty good, you know, emotional health. They probably don't get enough rest and sleep. Because they sleep with the phone probably.
What young adult does.
Yeah. They get adjusted. They've been adjusted since they were 45 minutes old. Right? Like the little girl you see running in here. Mm-hmm. Right? So we put together a health plan for them. This is not difficult. Health is not difficult. Do what we did 200 years ago and you will be healthier. Do what people do now and there's consequences. If you look for certified organic, that label on your food, non-GMO project, now you're going to be in a better position because you're not going to have genetically modified food. You're not going to have ingredients that were produced in a lab. EWG.org is a fantastic website. Not just food. It'll tell you what foods are the most genetically modified, what foods are not. Beauty products, household cleaners, personal, you know, hygiene products, stuff like that. Great website. Phenomenal website. EWG.org. One thing you can do with your diet to increase the health of your microbiome is to eat fiber. Because the bacteria in your body feed off of that. The more diverse the fruits and vegetables you eat, the more diverse the makeup in the ecosystem of your microbiome is. People say to me, well, I can't eat beans. Beans are a big one. A lot of fiber in it. People say, oh, I can't eat beans. You know why? Because you never ate beans, so you don't have the bacteria to break the beans down. Start eating them little by little. Your gut microbiome will change. Right? I'm bloated after I eat this. Yeah, you're not breaking it down effectively. Start little. Build up a new gut microbiome. It just takes time. But the more fiber you eat, the more diversity that your diet comprises of in fruits and vegetables, the healthier your gut microbiome is. Look at food from a nutritional standpoint, not a caloric standpoint. The more nutritionally dense your food is, the more you're going to benefit from that. So foods are either calorically or nutritionally dense. all these jelly beans have the same number of calories as the fruit. But the fruit has more nutritional density than the jelly beans. It's like a bowl of potato chips or broccoli, right? The broccoli has more nutritional value. The only way you get fiber are plants, fruits and vegetables. So it's very important to realize what your diet is made of. If you just do one thing, and that's, well, a couple things, but eat foods that have more fiber and look at the type of food you're eating. Especially, you go to that website, it'll tell you, hey, if you're going to spend money on organic food, these are the foods that are going to be genetically modified. These are not. Right? You don't have to necessarily buy organic everything. And most times, it's not that much more expensive. It's really not. But if you start thinking about nutritional density of foods, what foods have the most nutrition? Kale, chard, bok choy, spinach, the leafy greens, all the vegetables, all different colors have different vitamins and minerals. Then your fruits, your nuts. But look at the nutritional density. It goes from 1 to 1,000. The 1,000 is the most nutritionally dense. 1 is minimally or nothing. But look at the difference. And look where most people spend most of their time, right? In the red column. But if you just make those changes with your diet, that's going to produce incredible benefits to you health-wise. 20 minutes a day. That's it. That's what your body needs, a minimum. 20 minutes a day of moderate exercise. That can mean a walk, a brisk walk. Intense exercise, about 15 minutes a day. That's it. I don't necessarily like waking up before 5 in the morning, but that's the only time I can go for my run. So I do it because there's a benefit, right? I go for a bike ride, 6 in the morning. That's the only time I have. I can't do it at night. My wife likes spending time with me, right? But that's the time, so I got to carve it out. So I wake up early. 20 minutes, 15 minutes of vigorous exercise. It's not a lot of time. And now we have more things on the phone, apps for exercise or coaching, or even if you don't want to, hire a coach. There's so many different programs and so many different resources, right? You don't even have to leave your house. It's good to leave your house, right? Get some fresh air, get outside, but you can do things now more than ever before. It's a commitment and then consistency. Seeing your chiropractor, right? Can reduce pharmaceutical expenses by 85%. Why? Because your body's in a healthier state. Your nervous system is what controls everything. You remove interference, your body's healthier. Interference to the nervous system due to spinal misalignments resulted in serious damage within a short period of time. Stabilizing your spine as soon after birth as possible as a preventative measure. Right? That's why my kids were adjusted when they were very, very young. Encourage people, hey, just get checked. It's not about the pain. It's about the pain is a symptom. Just like high blood pressure. Maybe there's an aneurysm. Well, the pain is telling you something is wrong. Interference. You remove interference, the body works better. Health is not really difficult. Don't read online. Don't go to the store without a plan. I mean, my wife is great. She makes, she says, all right, this is what we're having this week. This is what you get. This is what you buy. Okay. Don't deviate. Yes, ma'am. Right? So we have a plan. What I do every week is I plan my week. I cut up all my vegetables on Saturday or Sunday, put them in a glass container, pick them out, throw them in my lunch. It's simple. I make 5 smoothies on Sunday for the entire week. It's very simple. It's done. Then I just grab the stuff out of the fridge, put whatever leftovers for dinner we have in a container, and that's my lunch. I'm good to go. Cut up my berries and all that. So my breakfast is ready. I just add some yogurt that night and some oatmeal to it. So if you plan ahead, it makes it easy. It takes me about an hour and a half total on a weekend, but my whole week is basically done. Salads are easy. Boom, put it in a container. So if you plan for it, you're going to make better choices and decisions. It's when we leave it to last minute and say, oh, what am I going to do? I'll just grab this. That's when we run into problems. You know, if we can just change our diets a little bit, make a small shift, right? Eat something that was live, eat something that has nutritional value. You're feeding your body. You're not just throwing food in your mouth, you're feeding your gut. That's what food does. It feeds your gut that then controls and heals your body. That's how I look at food. Probably one of the most profound things that I ever did was when I was in chiropractic school, we had to work on cadavers, and you get to see the inside of people. And when you do that, typically if they know the known cause of death, it's on a card, you read it. And then when you're dissecting the organs and stuff, you get to see what it looks like. I had that experience, it was phenomenal. You get to see what dark gray lungs look like. Well, they died of cancer. Well, okay, lung cancer, right? Yeah. You got to see what organs look like that were not functioning well. Well, they don't just end up like that. They end up like that because they're not cared for. They say, religion say what, the body is the temple?
Yep.
How do you take care of your temple? What message are you sending to your miracle children? You're a miracle. You're just a taller version of the kids. What opportunities do we give ourselves to live long, healthy lives? People say to me, I wouldn't want to live to 120 years old. Well, no, in the state of health that most people are, why would you? Well, you're probably not, but why would you? But if you had the chance to live a vibrant life, 100, 105, 110, why wouldn't you? More time with your family? And I don't know what comes after. I don't know if up, down, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going to enjoy here, right? But it's how we prepare ourselves. You get one body. You don't get more than that. We came with all our parts. They should stay with us throughout our lives. We don't need extra ones. If we did, we'd have a zipper. We don't. So take care of your life. Take care of your health. Put a health plan together. Just make small changes. We have videos on, diet, nutrition, nutritional density, how to food prep. What choices are better for me. We have tons of videos on our website. Just ask me if you have questions. I'll help you sit down. I've done that with people. We sit down at a lunchtime. We put together, a diet or give you, at least a direction to go.
It'll be easier if I just move in with you.
It's fine. We have a king size bed. We have plenty of room. But all you need to do is just think of, am I steering my boat or is it on autopilot? Because if you're not actively navigating your boat, someone else is, or some other entity is. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here. We're going to have another workshop in January. We'll kick off the year. And if you have questions at any time, obviously with the adjustments, we're kind of moving along. So just let me know, hey doc, I'd like to spend some extra time with you next time. Email me before or tell me at the appointment and we'll do it. That's what I'm here for. I don't look at you as a pain. I look at you as a person that has potential. And if we're able to tap into more of that potential, you just are able to express more of yourself. Because we're magical and we're perfect. We just have to express it. So I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Wow.
Now go eat.